And perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So we just had the festival of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva and heard about so much about compassion during the ceremony. And so I would like to talk about compassion. One aspect of compassion that came up for me to talk about. And that is faith. Faith as one of the greatest aspects of compassion. Faith in ourselves, compassion to ourselves, and faith in other beings, that we can do this practice. Reverend Master Jiyu used to say that everyone is doing the best they can at all times. And of course that can be really difficult to see, but we are all doing the best we can. So with keeping this in mind, how can we be kinder to ourselves? How can we accept what goes through our minds and not identify so much with it and judge ourselves so much by it? How can we accept ourselves as we are? One of the monks said to me after I was kind of grouching about what a horrible human being I was, and he said, well, you might as well accept yourself. You're all you've got. I didn't appreciate that at the time, but I think it's quite true. So faith in ourselves and others is the greatest compassion. Faith that we can do this training, faith in our own Buddha nature, faith that we can handle whatever comes our way, and faith that others can do this also. I've had a couple of old songs going through my mind recently, and sometimes when this happens, it's something trying to teach me something, something trying to tell me something. And so the first song is You've Got to Walk That Lonesome Valley by Woody Guthrie. I don't know if any of you have heard that. Some of you are nodding. Actually, what went through my mind is You've Got to Walk That Lonesome Highway, which isn't the words, but anyway, it was going through my mind. You've got to walk that lonesome highway. You've got to walk it by yourself. Nobody else can walk it for you. You've got to walk it by yourself. And so this was pretty clear teaching for me. And I like this song because it implies that we can do this practice. It may seem kind of harsh, you've got to walk this lonesome highway all by yourself, but if you look at it another way, it's telling you can do it. You can do this, you can do this practice. You can face whatever comes your way. Everybody's got to do that. Although it may be scary to think we have to do it by ourselves, it's also very reassuring that we can do it. In the early days of my training, I had very little faith in myself and looked outside myself for reassurance. And the most help I got at that time was when somebody said to me when I was going to her for help, she was kind of fed up with me, but it was really helpful. She said, I can't do it for you. Basically, you've got to do it by yourself. And it was like, oh, there's no one to turn to anymore but me. And so I looked within. Sometimes it takes that for us to really look within and face whatever is there. And Reverend Master Jiyu had faith in all of us. So she didn't pamper us. If you were having a hard time, she didn't say, oh, they're there, all will be well. She told us that she had faith in us and then let us do the work. And I think that was a very great gift. Now remember how difficult it was when I had little faith in myself and was afraid to look within. And that's how it was for me in the beginning. But the more we take the leap of faith, the more we see that we can actually do it when it's difficult. And I'd like to read the fourth verse of this Lonesome Valley song because I really like it. There is a road that leads to glory through a valley far away. Nobody else can walk it for you. They can only point the way. So I think that's very Buddhist. And so maybe after I give this Dharma talk, that song will stop going through my mind. Sometimes that happens when I finally get it. It stops going through my mind. When we know we need to walk this lonesome highway by ourselves, then we have to look at ourselves with kindness. We are truly doing the best we can. When we train, we are trying to do something that is difficult to do. That is letting go of habitual ways of seeing things, habitual ways of acting, ingrained karmic tendencies. And this is really hard. This is really hard to do. I want to read something from Roar of the Tigris, Volume 2, which I believe one of my markers disappeared. So let's see if I can find it. Oh no, it was in the other book. Okay. So this is Reverend Master Jiyu commenting on Dogen's The Practice of Mountains and Water. Because your training may seem extremely slow, do not doubt that training is actually taking place. For in reality, it is more swift than the wind. Moving on in this context means doing real training. Constantly moving on means that there is unending training, which is how the training of Buddha is and how ours must be. While this training moves on more swiftly than the wind, those who have no familiarity with it have no cognizance of this. Their ignorance of this movement is a very different thing from the fact that those who live on the mountain, those who are the mountain, are in the same situation as a plum blossom that does not know that it is red and yet still leads the way onward to the truth. And then, the fact that you cannot see a person training all the time does not mean that person isn't training. And then what is this? However slowly a person may seem to train, there is training going on. For the unborn is the unborn, and Buddha nature is at work in every one of us. If we look at our fellow trainees as mountains, knowing how solid and unchanging a mountain may appear to us and yet be in motion, then we can cease to criticize them. We can cease criticizing the speed of their training or our own. So I found this really helpful when I first read it, because I was always thinking, my training is awfully slow. But I found that very reassuring. We really don't know what is going on, and that we are really doing the best we can. How can we be unkind to ourselves when we know how difficult training can be, how difficult life can be? Being kind to ourselves means not running away from what is within and not judging ourselves so harshly. As we go on in training, trying to keep the precepts, then what we see within isn't so difficult to bear because we know we are trying, and the karma is being cleansed. So what I have found in my training is what was so difficult to look at in the beginning has changed and been cleansed, and the fact that I'm trying to do this practice means that looking within isn't so difficult, although it can be. I've been a monk for 48 years, and I think I should be doing better after so long. But when I look back at how I was and the struggles I've had with my karmic tendencies, I know that I've actually come a long way. So I'll say this over and over, we need to be kind to ourselves while continuing to work on ourselves. And what I've been facing recently is all the little ways I get angry and annoyed, and making the effort not to get involved in the anger, but allow it to arise and allow it to go. Not to judge the anger and not to give it any weight or energy. It's hard work to convert our habitual ways of acting. And during this ceremony, what came up for me was how great compassion is within us all, and how we cover it up by kind of the crud of self. And it reminded me of a spiritual direction ceremony that Reverend Master Daisui gave soon before he died. And this is a spiritual direction ceremony is when all the monks go up to the master and ask a question from their meditation, and he or she answers from her meditation. And he was just so bright and so loving and kind. It was just amazing. And when I went up to him, I said, thank you for your great kindness. And he said, it's not me that's kind, it's getting me out of the way. And so what it made me think of during this ceremony is the great compassion is there, but it's getting ourselves out of the way. And that takes hard work. And it's not easy. So again, kindness to ourselves. Perhaps that highway or valley can seem lonesome because sometimes we're training in the dark, needing to take the next step without reassurance, without knowing, trusting that it's enough to do the training, to keep on trying. Even when we seem to lose faith and want to give up, something in us knows we need to keep on going. If we give in to our karmic tendencies, we feel awful and our suffering increases. So I encourage all of us to just keep on going no matter what. And meditation is very important. It's what sustains us in the dark. It's what we can turn to over and over again for help. And I know that I've talked to people sometimes who are having a really difficult time, and I might say, have you kept up your meditation? And they say, no, it was too difficult. So, but it's really what helps us. It's there for us all the time, and we can always turn towards meditation and be kind to ourselves. This is a very hard time in our world, and we are affected by it, perhaps with grief, depression, or even despair. And this is normal for what is going on. And we can keep on training. This reminds me, we have a magnet on one of our refrigerators here with a picture of the Dalai Lama. And the quote on the magnet is, "If you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito in your room." I love that. If we've been training for a while, we know that depression and despair lead nowhere. Training leads to true peace of heart and the awareness of a bigger picture. There is more than how we are feeling of what is going on in the world. As I was preparing this talk, I stopped and I looked at my email, and there was a short verse written by Reverend Master Koten with a photo of a Buddha statue in the snow. And the verse was, "Bright morning, and I see the Buddha's compassion looking at me." And for some reason, it came right from his heart, and it went right to my heart. And I thought, yes, there is compassion. Yes, there is a bigger picture. And yes, there is a reason to train, especially now. It is so important to hold up a light, what Reverend Master Koten calls an affirming flame, in the world right now, to offer the merit of our meditation and training for the benefit of all beings. For me, as I mentioned earlier, it's important for me to train with my anger so I can be kind instead of annoyed, so I can allow compassion to surface. Reverend Koten sent another email recently with a link to an article called "Where Are Our Manners?" by Dorothy Woodend. And I'd like to read one section of it, which I really like. It says, "Go ape. Humans are social animals, but we can learn from the lessons of other creatures who also practice generosity, selflessness, and altruism. Gorillas in particular are prone to helping other gorillas, but have also been known to take care of the occasional random human child that topples into their midst. Most wild creatures seem innately well-mannered. If you are good to them, they will be good to you. Then do for others. When everything feels too much, doing something for someone else can boost you up and out of the spiral of despair. Even the smallest gesture can make a difference. Holding doors, thanking people, giving compliments. Gentle is the name of the game at the moment. Gentle on our other folks, but also on yourself as well. But I am only we, W-E-E. But Dorothy, you say, this is Dorothy Woodard, you say, does any of this individual stuff mean anything in the midst of ongoing large-scale bad behavior? It all feels very small and pitiful to think I'll try and be a better person while glaciers collapse and Australia catches fire. Does being kind really matter when all manner of human darkness is running roughshod over the world? In a word, yes! ! Not just for other people, but also for yourself. Even if the obliteration of manners might seem nigh, as people accost others on the street, hurling ad hominem arguments about anyone who chooses to wear a mask, don't worry. We've weathered worse and emerged battered but still gallant. If all else fails and you lose your cool, try to keep it in perspective. You're only human, and the current state of the world would test anyone's mettle. Give yourself a break before you break something. That holds especially true for someone else's heart or spirit. So being kind and sympathetic to ourselves and others is something we can always do. When life gets very rough, we can call on Avalokiteshvara to help us. And I have done this many, many times as a monk, and I have found it extremely helpful. There is always something we can do if we're willing to look up and have faith. And I want to read something from How to Grow a Lotus Blossom, which is Reverend Master Jiyu-Kennett's experience in 1976. And she talks about her experience of 5 columns of light, and she's talking about the first column. And in this column there are clouds up in the sky, and they're really dark, and there's one little spot of light. I go up the first column of light and realize that it is the one that comes from the black clouds in the sky that I saw before my ordination. That's the ordination in this book. Although I'm going towards a tiny spot in the darkness, it always remains light. The emanation of the cosmic Buddha comes over from the bright columns to enter the one that I am in just above me, and I understand this is how earth penetrates heaven. No matter how great the darkness, there is still light to be found therein by those who truly look. And then a little later on she talks about this again. Eternal meditation is the meaning of this first column of light and its second aspect, its first being its appearance, which I described before. Even in the darkest place, the truth may be seen and heard. Thus meditation is possible for eternity. There is always light and darkness, and the Buddha may be seen therein if we have the willingness to look. The third aspect of eternal meditation is its use. Its use is to bring peace and freedom in all the situations that life brings. Sitting in this eternal meditation, I watch that which the world regards as good or bad come and go as reflections in a mirror. All is ever changing. The mirror is clear. It does not retain the reflections. Training, not giving in to despair, may mean that we need to be willing to experience our own grief and the grief in our world, to experience the insecurity and instability of our lives, which is more evident now with everything that's going on, to practice letting go and all acceptance. So that's a tall order, but that's what we do. Now, another song that has been going through my mind a lot lately, even more than the other song, is Smile Though Your Heart is Breaking. And this song was actually, the music was written in 1936 by Charles Chaplin for the film Modern Times. And then the lyrics were written later, maybe soon after that. So I'm going to read it to you. Smile though your heart is aching. Smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, Smile and maybe tomorrow you'll see the sun come shining through for you. Light up your face with gladness, hide every trace of sadness, although a tear may be ever so near. That's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you'll just smile. I love that song. So there's more to life than the suffering we may feel and see in the world around us. And we are all so lucky to have this training because it teaches us what to do in all circumstances. So, thank you. So you'll have to remind me to smile. I sometimes forget.